The Cosmic Instruction Manual, an emergency remedial edition created by Mission Control.
Rick Larsen is reading an excerpt from a text.
You can see that. The cover says ET, so Extraterrestrial 101.
That ended up in his family's home nearly 30 years ago. That's when his wife Helen became involved in a group named the Extraterrestrial Earth Mission.
The cult completely took over her life for a number of months.
Helen became involved after a trip to Arizona, where she met two women who brought her to gatherings.
She became completely brainwashed, came back home. I picked her up at the airport in Perth afterwards, and I could see that she'd been completely changed by this group's techniques.
Helen is not alone. Some experts estimate that hundreds of thousands of Americans belong to a cult at any given time.
She was not gullible at all, but she was vulnerable. And so she was looking for purpose.
That's where cult interventionists step in.
My name is Joe Szimhart. I'm known as a cult information specialist. Cult intervention is not to get people out of a cult, it's to help them to choose their way out of it.
According to Joe, a cult is a group with a self-sealing social system.
It's maintaining its own definition of reality, and it's self-sealing and kind of like an echo chamber. The people all feed into the central idea of the leader, and the leader controls it. That's generally an unhealthy situation.
Joe's methods involve having a discussion with the affected person, during which he will ask questions and offer additional information.
Usually that's done by surprise because people in cultic groups do not want to meet with a cult expert. You know, they don't think they're in a cult, they don't think there's a problem.
He usually works alongside the members' loved ones to bring them back to reality.
They love their family, and they're conflicted by the group saying you can't be with their family.
Joe says it's important the member knows they can stop the discussion or ask him to leave at any time.
Well, if you can get through the first day and into the second day, normally you're going to have a successful intervention. Because by that time, the person is finding value in what I'm saying.
Joe has been performing interventions for nearly 40 years, ever since he left a group he calls a cult.
It was called Summit Lighthouse and Church Universal and Triumphant, and I was involved with it for about a year and a half. I noticed some serious problems. The idea behind the groups was to transform the self and then to help transform the world into a better, more holy place. The leaders didn't seem to be living according to the strict codes of ethics that the members were expected to live by. You know, I found out that the leadership was eating meat and ice cream, and that was forbidden. And I began to research the whole background of it, and I had a clearer head. You know, things cleared up in my head.
He separated himself from the group after months of research and discussion with other skeptical members. But his first real intervention began as an accident.
I was doing portraits at a mall in Santa Fe in New Mexico, and a young woman, she was 19, approached me to do a portrait of her from a photograph for her fiance.
The young woman began recruiting him into a small church she was a part of, which Joe concluded was a cult.
I kind of let her recruit me, but then I kept asking her questions. And she got curious about why I knew so much about the Bible. And that opened her eyes to show that her preacher was really quite manipulative and misusing these scriptures.
Joe helped reunite the young woman with her family, whom she hadn't seen for more than 6 months. He's been helping people ever since, including Helen and Rick.
She was told the mission was more important than the family. So you might love your family, but hey guys, you know, we've got a planet to save here.
Helen had moved to another city to live with members of the cult, leaving behind her husband and their 3 teenage children.
She had no job. She had a little bit of money, but not much. There was nothing to do all day except read group materials, listen to group tapes, watch group videos.
That's when Joe intervened. He and another colleague flew to Australia to meet with Helen. Eventually, she decided to come back home.
She just needed to solidify her family relationships again and understand what she'd been subjected to and how wrong it was. One of the things we've learned, is that you don't put a lot of work into a marriage to throw it away too easily. The whole experience made our marriage stronger.
Helen and Rick wrote a book together about their experience years later. Today, Rick is involved in volunteer organizations that help support families like his.
I just thought I'd do my best to make sure that other people were not treated as Helen was.
This is The Issue for Inside Edition Digital.